and welcome to the regular meeting of the Recreation and Parks Commission. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, thank you, Julie. Roll call, please, Jackie.
Good evening, Commissioners. Commissioner Watson? Present. Commissioner Stolnak?
Present.
Commissioner Lubes is not with us this evening. Vice Chair Davis?
Present.
And Chairperson Moda.
I am here, thank you. No presentations tonight. Okay, public communications related to commission business only, and that is within the subject matter under the jurisdiction of the commission. Seeing none, we'll close public communications. Move to the consent calendar. Approval of the minutes of the Recreation and Parks Commission regular meeting of September 18th, 2019. Anyone?
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0. There's no unfinished business tonight. New business. We're going to take number 2 first. Number 2 is accept a donation of materials and labor from Eagle Scout candidate Jake Lane, sorry about that, for improvements to be made at Recreation and Parks Fire Circle, and approve the project plans. Recommendations from staff: accept donation of materials and labor from Eagle Scout candidate Jake Lane for improvements to be made at Recreation Park Fire Circle. 2, approve the project plans. Or 3, alternatively, discuss and take other action related to this item. Meredith?
Yes, thank you very much. So tonight we have with us Jake Lane. Jake is an Eagle Scout candidate, and he has proposed a project at Rec Park Fire Circle. He identified this area as an area in need of a little bit of sprucing up, and so I'm going to let him describe the concept of his project and tell you all about what he's planning to do. So with that, I would introduce Jake up to the podium.
So I'll tell you a little bit about what an Eagle Project is first, for those of you who haven't been involved in Scouts at all. So an Eagle Project is the last part to being a Scout before you can receive the highest honor of being an Eagle Scout. Prior to that, there are 21 merit badges, 13 required, and 8 electives, all ranging from camping, hiking, and first aid to fun stuff that everybody loves to do. So the Eagle Project is the last thing before receiving the Eagle Award, and the project, the main thing that they're looking for is to be fully Scout-led and Scout from doing the work and material acquisition to fundraising. I've already gone around and had donations from multiple companies here in town and fully covered the budget, and I've also received approval from the BSA chair committee for our district, and so your approval will be the last that I need to continue on this project. So I'll give you, I have some pictures that can show you of the current condition and proposed pathway. So what made me first think of this project was our church youth group. We had an activity down there, and one of the girls in our youth group, she has a severe form of scoliosis, and she goes back and forth. She has multiple surgeries, and it's pretty much on a week-to-week basis. You never know if she's in crutches or a wheelchair. And luckily, that week she was in crutches, and she was able to come join us. But if she had been in a wheelchair that week, she would not have been able to make it across the mulch and come join us. So part of the proposed project is not only building a new fire pit because of how it's deteriorated and how the logs have gone, but also building a decomposed granite pathway. Decomposed granite, it's like a baseball field type dirt used in a lot of national parks, and it's the way you do that is you dig out just a couple inches, you lay it out, and then compact it. That way it's a more firm ground and more accessible. And it really is, it's close to ADA. It can be approved as ADA, but just not calling that makes it easier on your guys' end for paperwork. So doing that will make it a lot easier for people to access and really clean up the entire fire circle area. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions or concerns.
So what are you doing with the fire pit area? Are you replacing the logs, or how's that going to work?
Yes, so we'll be fully taking out the current fire pit, building a new one. We'll add a little lip, because one thing I also noticed while we were having our activity there is, when you're roasting marshmallows or anything, there's nowhere to like rest the sticks on the edge, and it's spread out to where you can't sit on the logs while roasting. So I'd proposing to shrink it down a little bit and move the logs a little closer. That way you can just make it easier to sit and roast whatever you want.
When you say shrink it down, are you bringing the logs in tighter to the fire pit
Yes, so the current fire pit is about 8 feet. We're going to shrink it down to 6, and then
in diameter?
yes, in diameter, and move the logs about 2 feet back from the edge of that. So the logs will be at 8-foot diameter. And then many of the logs some of them are in good condition, some are not, and we'll just simply be replacing those that are in poor condition.
So Christopher, do you see any long-term maintenance of the DG? And is that of any concern?
No, actually, it's a better material than the wood chip mulch that's there now. So I'm looking forward to the improvements.
Jake, I think it's a great project that you're doing. It has needed some attention for a while. And I think raising it also is a good idea because it is flat right there to the ground. And so I think it's better to raise it up. I don't know how high you're going, but I think that's a good idea. And I like the pathway to make it accessible for more people. And it's also, helps out for the seniors to get in there as well.
And I know we can see when you would like to get this completed by, but could you tell us?
Yes, so next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday is the date we're looking for. We wanted to keep it on weekdays because most of the use of the fire pit is on the weekends, and a lot of it's already been booked out and planned, so we're going to keep it on the weekdays so it does not disrupt the weekend activities.
And staff is in total agreement with the plans?
We are. We have met with Jake, and Christopher met with Jake a few times, and made some suggestions for the improvements as well that we would prefer, such as a border between the DG and the wood chip, and small things like that Jake is comfortable adding to the project. So we fully support the project.
I have a little background in fire pits. I was a lifeguard for 37 years at Dockweiler, in and out with those fire pits, and there are some concerns. And I'm not sure about this for a park, but I believe it's probably wise of us to market hot coals, as obvious as it is that it is a fire pit and there are hot coals. If we could just double check to make sure that there's no signage that needs to go alongside as we modify it. I know that this has been here since I was a kid, and it hasn't had to go through a lot of the regulations, but maybe just double check to make sure that there's no, when we upgrade or improve this, that it's going to need some kind of, hot coals, don't walk across, which sounds silly, but there's a number of people that end up either doing it because they want to or because they're just not aware. And so maybe just take a look at that if we could. And it might just be as simple as spray paint, hot coals
I'll
on three
donate the
sides.
paint.
I know it sounds silly, but
Yeah, that's something
I'd
simple.
rather do it early than late, and have somebody come back and want to get an attorney involved.
Okay, any other questions?
Do you need a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'd like to motion to accept the donation of materials and labor from Eagle Scout candidate Jack Lane for improvements to be made at Recreation and Park Fire Circle and approve the project plans.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's 4-0. Congratulations, good luck.
Thank you.
And it would be nice to have another fellow Eagle Scout around. So,
Thank you, Jake.
Thank you, Jake.
thank you. Number 1, new business still. Receive a presentation from nonprofit organization Walk with Sally on their event proposal for hosting a charity event called White Light, White Night at the Campus El Segundo Athletic Fields in the summer of 2020. The recommendations from staff are to receive the presentation from the event applicant And 2, discuss and provide feedback to the applicant and to staff. Meredith?
Yes, thank you very much. So tonight we have 2 members from Walk with Sally. We have Paige Sachs, who's the Director of Special Events and Communications, along with Nick Arquette, the CEO and founder of the organization. They've brought a presentation. They want to provide some background on the organization and the event itself. You may be familiar with this event. It's been occurring in the city of El Segundo at various locations for a number of years. I'll let them tell you the details about that. But they've come to us and identified Campus El Segundo as a potential site for their event for the summer of 2020. And it's a rather large event. Obviously, you know how protective we are of our facility, in particular that synthetic turf that was just installed just a couple years ago. And so they have been working on potential solutions and talking about what they could do to host the event there, knowing our concerns of protecting the field as well as minimizing the impact to our users. And so without further ado, I'll have them come up, run through their presentation, and then tonight's discussion is just so that you can hear the idea. We don't necessarily need to approve it, but I would like to hear your concerns and feedback so that we can mitigate any of those if should we choose to move forward. And likely we will be at City Council sometime in November or December with this because alcohol is one of the requests for the event. And also we will probably be discussing some sort of differential fee as it relates to the reservation. But we have not gotten to those specific details yet. So just conceptually tonight, we wanted to hear the commission's initial feedback and concerns, if you have any. So I will turn it over to them.
Great, Commission. Thank you for letting us come in and chat with you about our charity and our event. So as she mentioned, I'm Nick Arquette, and I'm the founder and the CEO. And Paige and I are going to just kind of work through quickly a little bit about our mission and why I started it. Honestly, as a community member in Manhattan Beach in the South Bay for the last 30 years, as an entrepreneur, I saw a lot of families that had gone through the experience I had. My mom died of cancer when I was 16, and I didn't see a lot of services that were out there for young boys and young girls who have a lot of crisis around cancer. So Walk with Sally was born 15 years ago. We're going to hit our 15th year this year, coming up in 2020. Our offices have been in El Segundo for the last 6 years. So we have had the privilege and the pleasure over the last 5 years to do White Light, our biggest fundraiser, and probably what we raised from this organization on White Light is about 65% of our operating budget. So it's an important event for us and for the community. But Walk with Sally really serves to help children whose parents have cancer or died of cancer. And how do we do that? We use the money we make to mentor children. We're sort of friendship brokers. We find members of this community and other communities in Los Angeles County who want to give a year of their time to a child while mom and dad are suffering or battling or have already passed away. We're in about 50 cities at any given time and currently support over 120 families under our case management. A lot of our kids are with us for many, many years, and they receive a lot of different support through our other programs. You can kind of see a few pictures here of the connection and communication of what it's like to be a child going through this experience, and really our vision to make sure that no child goes through cancer alone. We've got a young man here who's doing one of our art therapy classes at a local restaurant that supported us called Pumpkins and Pizza. And another just picture of a mentor and mentee that have been together for 3 years. And so what we really are doing tonight is sharing with you hopefully just more about the charity in case you wanted to know and continue to support us in this city of El Segundo, working through the schools, working through our hospitals, and just spreading the word. And then really to kind of just address and talk a little bit about the history of Walk with Sally as a fundraiser. And as I mentioned earlier, White Light has become popular. Last year, Chevron was awarded our Beacon of Light Award. And we gave it to Chevron because for the last 10 years, they've been supporting this event. And one of the things that the team over there has said, Jill and Jeff and others, is that Walk with Sally and the event really do bring the community together. It's one of the first times that at White Light we talk about cancer in front of a live audience and we share our story. So when I think about a fundraiser with 300 people in a gala in a hotel, that's not what this is. This is really a community opportunity. Is it free? No, we charge. We charge for a ticket. But we get a lot of people that are coming in from all over to support the cancer and what happens when cancer hits the family. So I just wanted to make sure that we talk a little bit about the meaning and the emotional connection that happens that night. I wanted to give you guys just a quick recap about what it's meant for the city of El Segundo in terms of how we advertise the event as a community event, and the news media, and the fact that El Segundo is kind of the key piece over the last 5 years, with Continental Development and Richard Lundquist being one of our biggest supporters. So just want to give you kind of an idea. There's 3 sections: a food and wine festival at 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, kind of traditional of what you've seen, Taste of LA. And then we go into a fundraising component where everyone's seated and you hear stories from families and other people impacted by cancer, and awards like Chevron. And then in the end, every year we've had a musical performance. So last year we had Belinda Carlisle. We've had other named acts in the past, and we've worked very closely with the city for all the things that you can imagine: sound mitigation, time constraints, parking, security. So one of the things I want you to know before I go into this video is how professional we are as an organization to host the event, and then our professional company that we bring in called Cora Events, which has been our partner for the last 10 years, putting the event on. So there's a lot of professionalism behind it, and so we're proud to be able to kind of present to you guys an opportunity to hopefully be able to host it in this other location. So do you want to click the... Yeah. So we'll just show you this, and just so you know, I'll make a comment afterwards and then let Paige talk to you a lot about the detail of what we would like to present to you all.
Welcome you back here at 6 o'clock. You know, almost 10 million Americans are living with cancer tonight, and of course some of them are parents, and their big concern is who's going to take care of the children if they're gone. A free support program called Walk with Sally addresses that type of concern.
And tonight, the program's annual fundraising event titled White Light, White Night is taking place in El Segundo.
I'm seeing a lot of smiles tonight, and I think what I'm really pressing to is this community. And when you come together for a good cause, people can't wait. They want a reason to just come out and support, and I think we're creating a platform for people to get back.
For introducing me to Jillian and for giving me a friendship that I'm not like never gonna lose. Thank you.
You've seen what this organization does, not only for the mentors, but for the mentees. Raise your paddle for these kids. Raise your paddle for the future.
Go. That's good. They get the idea. A lot of the supporters there, you'll see Continental Development, of course, Chevron, Skechers, Westdrift, South Bay Magazine. So a lot of great support from this local community. And I think also exciting just to be able to present El Segundo on the news, and also people coming into El Segundo from everywhere from Beverly Hills to Marina Del Rey to Palos Verdes to San Diego to Arizona. So something we're really proud of and want to keep it here. So I'm going to turn it over a little bit sort of on the emotional side and turn it over to Paige on just more of the logistical side.
Hi, everyone. So as you saw from our video and what Nick started to talk about, this event really is a large-scale event, just to give you an idea of the size and the magnitude of what we're doing and what we're looking for. Also, as he mentioned, for the past 6 years, we've been hosting it on the rooftop of the ArcLight parking structure off Rosecrans, in case you were wondering. Like he mentioned, Richard Lundquist and Continental Development have been so gracious to host us there. Our offices are located in one of his buildings, and so in our conversations early on, he offered up that space for us to use. We actually started this process of looking for something new. In the past, we had changed our location for White Light, White Night every couple years or so, trying to keep it fresh. Last year, we started this process. In talks with Barbara Voss, we actually took a peek at Campus El Segundo, knowing the magnitude of the fields. We started on this, but then knowing, how important the turf is, and we wanted to make sure it would be protected appropriately. We actually also got an extension from Richard to go ahead and host the event for one more year. So we went down that path and came back this year to fully come and be able to present to you an option and an idea to make sure that you won't feel any impact from us being able to host the event at the Campus El Segundo fields. So what you see on the right side of your page are just some additional information about what we are presenting and the ideas we have. What you see up here is a rough layout of how we would propose use of the fields. Ideally, the event does require about a 2-day build out. So we would be looking to close off half or one of the 2 fields for Thursday and Friday, thus allowing the Parks and Rec to use at least one of the fields during that time. The event would take place on Saturday. We would secure the event location, make sure that there's security, create fencing around it, whatever the case may need. And then on Sunday, we would strike the event and have it ready for use by Monday morning. So trying to minimize the impact to the city and to the Parks and Rec division as well, as much as possible. Also looking at timeline and working with Meredith and with Sean, trying to find times when the fields aren't necessarily in super high demand. It's before soccer season really starts up. So we're willing to kind of look at dates. That's why we have some ideas of late July, early August, so that it doesn't have as much of an impact on any other potential rentals of the fields or anything like that. Like we also mentioned, we have hosted the event on that rooftop for the past 6 years here within the city of El Segundo, so we're familiar with the permitting process, all of the hoops that we get to jump through, so we're very familiar and have not had any issues with any of that in the past. So the other thing I want to talk to you about. Okay, so we were talking about how it's so important to protect the field. So what are we going to do that? We've partnered with our friends over at Cora Events, and one of their partners, which is called EPS, they provide and what you'll see on the right side of your folder, are these turf protection materials and squares. They've been used at places like Bank of California Stadium, where the LAFC plays. They've been used at all kinds of different venues. They've been used in Hermosa Beach for the summer concert series as ground protection, turf protection. They've been used for construction sites to ease transportation and make it a smooth surface for everybody to go over or walk over. The first level of protection that we would do is we would provide a plastic covering over the turf, and then we would use these 2 different types of ground coverings and turf protection synthetic materials to go on top of that. The first being the EPS Pro, which would then be put on top for any pedestrian areas. It's perfectly fine for pedestrian walkways. And then the Matrax, which is a little bit more heavy duty and would be sufficient to for use of any kind of equipment like golf carts or stage, tenting. It'll hold higher level loads without damaging the turf underneath. And then lastly on that side, I also provided a case study that EPS had provided to me as well of something that they use. The University of Illinois has worked with them over the past, I believe, 4 years. And they have a completely synthetic turf as well. So this company does have experience creating this on a similar surface and has not had any issues with turf damage or anything like that. So just wanted to kind of give you a full picture of what the event entails and then how we would protect it. Are there any questions as you digest all that?
The first thing I see is, you said golf carts on top, okay? But then I actually see cars in your picture.
So, and this is a very rough layout.
Okay.
Yep. Taken off of what we had done and what you actually saw in that video on that rooftop.
Right.
So, and these cars are for display purposes only. South Bay BMW has been one of our sponsors, I believe, for the past 4 years running. And they like to display their cars for people to look at the entrance. So in our process, we're also considering the possibility of closing off that street next to the entrance and having our entrance actually on the street with those cars parked there.
On the street?
On the street. So that is more likely going to be the possibility. This was a quick rendition of kind of all the pieces of the event from our previous layout, just wanting to give you kind of an idea of all the different aspects and how it could potentially lay out on the field. But again, we're completely flexible and willing to kind of work with whatever you see might be an issue.
I think one of the things we wanted to do is take a study from professional organizations that have exactly the same thing you do. So, for example, the newest soccer stadium in downtown LA is hosting concerts on their real turf, similar to the synthetic that you guys have. So we're starting to pull out and find out who those vendors are and looking to see if this solution is really one that is going to allow for you guys to maybe even have an option down the road that could provide some other opportunities for you if the price was right. So we didn't just pull this out. We really have done a lot of research in terms of how much is load bearing, what could we put on it, what can't we put on it, and those are some of the things that we will flesh out with you guys as we move kind of closer, as we're obviously in the preliminary stages. But the car thing, as she said, is not a deal breaker, but we might have something that can prove that's not an issue either. I like the idea that this has a private road and a lot of parking opportunities through our sponsors. So there's a lot of options here, and because it's a weekend in the summer, even more so.
That was going to be my question, is where are you going to park these 1,000 attendees?
Uber.
Uber ideally is going to drop off all these cities. Really, what we've seen over the past 6 years or so, even though we've had the event in the parking structure, we highly encourage our guests to take an Uber or a rideshare because there's alcohol involved. So really, we're looking at parking mostly our vendor vehicles, and so we would be having conversations with Sherry Kramer and Continental Development about using that Elevon parking area as a potential, or also, I believe across the street, the Lakers.
Some of them sponsored and supported us last year.
Right, correct. So we would be looking at some of those as possibilities, as well as the airline building that's also
Airline
across the
building,
street.
Yeah, which I don't know if that's underground, but we would certainly be engaging them as well for that night. So there's a lot of good options. I just have to knock on some doors or make some phone calls, and we'll be able to present that to you or the council as we go down that.
I would anticipate it would be no more than 100 vendor vehicles that we would be trying to park.
I think you are more interested in the attendees than the vendor vehicles.
Right, because I know
Yeah.
we do, same at Rotary Club, encourage people to do Uber
Right.
and all of that, but not everybody does.
Yeah.
And so you are going to have a lot of cars to park, at that event. So I was just wondering where, because the street's only going to hold so many.
You know, at worst comes to worst, something like Wiseburn, who we pay and do a shuttle. There's so many options around there that are just kind of unbelievable that I just haven't even drilled that down yet. But I can assure you that this is one of the reasons that a year and a half ago we thought that this would be an ideal location because of all of the
Opportunities.
and then 12 or 13 years that we've had to learn how to do this. We've done it at the Shade Hotel in Redondo Beach that's there now, when it was an empty lot. And now Beach Life is doing their concerts down there. We've done it on the parking structure 7 stories high. We've had to always problem solve and really make sure that those solutions satisfy the cities that we're in.
Have you investigated any other venue spots in El Segundo, such as the lakes and Chevron facility as well?
Yes. Yes, to answer very shortly. We have been in touch with the lakes, and we're also looking at other potential venue options within actually the city of El Segundo as well. We've been talking with Tom Sheets and the people over at Cushman Wakefield with some, again, possible kind of commercial building sites off of Continental Boulevard.
So the old Northrop Grumman lot and the old building there.
And that Federal
Partners
Credit
that just
Room.
purchased. Across the street, W Promote, Cushman Wakefield have a very large but very secluded, and you would never know that they have a large parking structure that sort of surrounds their campus. So yes.
So we're diving down those roads as well at the same time as certainly kind of wanting to move things forward. But what we don't want is to get stuck going down one path and then find that it's not working and then come March and then have no location ready. So we're sort of pushing forward all the possible opportunities at the same time. We have talked to the lakes, but because of the ongoing negotiations with Topgolf, we've always been sort of told that all the dates are very up in the air and construction can begin at a moment's notice. So that's been our conversations
And
there.
some of the elevation issues are creating a real problem for a flat surface, and high heels, which is a big problem I always think of. What about the high heels?
That's all I'm thinking too. I'm sorry, that turf took us a lot to get.
Constantly worried about it.
Well,
when
and
I bring up
this would
wedges,
be-
people just look at me weird. So.
And what we're proposing would be a full, a very hard a hard plastic surface. So you wouldn't even feel as though you're walking on the turf, if that.
Does
kind of
that
helps
apply
you
to the
understand.
checkout areas or the check-in area as well? Because I see that there's a grid for the one half of the field that has a lot of staging and whatnot, but
Correct. We would not be touching the field unless we can afford the square footage to cover it. So what we were told last year was, we love this idea, we want to present it on, but if you can't figure out a way to cover it appropriately. So it took us 6 months to come back and really have the time to show you guys kind of how far we've come. But we could remove the check-in and now realize that the city may give us this entire private street. I think you had said to us that 1 or 2 of them are private, so that there is some options there. I work in the film industry, so under certain circumstances, it's not unheard of to close off one of the streets. So this could allow for us to have square footage that we wouldn't have normally had up in the parking structure. In other words, we had to build everything on the platform, whereas here we do have some extenuating circumstances that allow us to go outside.
so I think what you're saying, to paraphrase, is that nobody would be allowed to walk on turf
Correct.
Correct.
for any reason,
Correct.
Even down to
even as
fencing.
overflow or somebody, right, so you'd fence it off.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
not really interested in putting the city or ourselves in any position that would leave us with a liability. So we're gonna go through the process of seeing what it would cost to fence or work with Parks and Rec to make sure that they feel comfortable that our contingency plan is suitable for keeping people off of certain areas.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure there's kids and people spilling bottles of water. We're just not taking it lightly. We don't want people in any area that's not covered.
Okay. So another situation with this particular, I appreciate you've done work on other turf, but one of the problems we had when we installed this turf was that there's something not great about the base. It's not compact enough. I imagine Christopher could actually share more of the details of why the project ended up getting delayed so much last year. And that there's a concern about the even distribution and how the footing is for that turf. And so I'm hearing a lot about heavy things going on it and wondering, it's not just the actual carpeting or the actual surface, but the base that may be a constraint. And I'm wondering how we could potentially assess that. And here's my overriding concern, is whether or not we've made a contingency to fix it if it gets damaged. There won't be time for the soccer season. And I'll talk about scheduling in a second. So I just want to make sure that whatever we do doesn't do any damage, regardless of any
Sure. And what we don't
agreement
know,
to
we
pay
don't
for it.
know, so we will rely heavily on you to tell us that, hey, we've got an underwater line that we didn't tell you about, and, you know, don't go there. Or if there's a certain area that a structural engineer could identify as a no-no area, we have the option of going on either side, which is the other beautiful thing. So you might say to me, we don't want you on that side. I like this side for one reason and one reason only. I think it's cool to have the MTA at night going past right in front of the event. And when you go there at night, you see what it looks like. You feel like you're transformed into some weird industrial park that built a soccer field in the middle of. So there's something really unique about this look, which most people maybe wouldn't pick up on.
That makes sense. Okay, my next question's about scheduling. Because, yes, it's after lacrosse and before soccer, except for camps. And I reached out to the user groups in town about their reservations this week. I know that AYSO's camp will be the last week in July, it generally is, that will be their request. Strikers is gonna be the first week in August, the 3rd through the 7th. The high school usually is the second week in August that they have a camp that they run. I know that there's some out-of-town revenue as well that we tend to get for the camps. Obviously, this is a big deal, but those groups really couldn't be I mean, I wouldn't think it would be fair to knock those groups off of their usual weeks. So have we looked at the schedule? Is there actually a week in this time that we don't have a group that usually uses that week?
No. We work with those groups. We usually schedule them, early, I would say February or so is when we start talking about the scheduling for the summer. So this would definitely be a unique situation where we would have to reach out to those groups now and see if they were flexible on those weeks or not, or and then get back with the applicants here and talk about how flexible their dates are. But yeah, typically our summer camps are Monday through Friday, depending on the group. So we would most definitely have to see where any flexibility lies, if any.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some flexibility on our part, so we would just, again, need to know, hey, the third weekend in July is really your weekend, and then we can say yay or nay. Or they could say that we're willing to push off of one of the prep days or put everybody on one side and we separate ourselves. I mean, probably some conversations that need to happen, to see if there's some workability there.
Right. So yeah, if depending on the summer camp, if they use both fields or one field, if we do determine that one field could still be available through Friday, then it may not be as impactful in terms of scheduling.
Well, first of all, I love your charity. I think it's great. I think what you're doing is great. I'd love to see it there. Your two big opportunities, I think we're calling them, are going to be your parking and to make sure that we don't offset other user groups. We've worked very hard in this city to maintain these facilities so that they're available to them. They use them year-round, and if they need them, you can understand that they should probably have them. But I appreciate you working with them and sitting down with Meredith and everything, so. Those are your opportunities.
Yeah, I agree with those opportunities. I love those opportunities, and they don't scare me. And I think there's things that we can do together. But it is getting the right people in the right room to walk through some of those scheduling elements. The parking, I can assure you, the city is going to be extremely happy with our plan.
I just had one more thing. Is there any issue because of alcohol being requested to be used on our park?
We typically, when that's the case, if we have an event that is requesting alcohol service on public property, it does require the city council to approve that request. So this would, as we move further, if we move further, would eventually make its way to the city council for that request.
Okay.
Yeah, and respectfully, I think Meredith really made it a point when we met with her originally, is just to make this the first stop, because it's, again, we don't have a lot of money and bandwidth to just go down a rabbit hole, and so we're trying to do this the right way, and so respectfully, that's why we're here.
And
Yeah,
as he said, first stop, they're definitely going to council, no matter what. And that's understandable. I think it's a great program, a great deal. So, I don't know, the only question I have is Christopher, and that's,
Yep.
Hi, Christine.
you see, I mentioned cars, with weight, do you see any issues? I mean, the cars, I believe, are going to be the heaviest thing, and probably the lighting
The
and the stage.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be spread out over
Yeah.
a good amount. It'll be distributed. The cars driving on there, that's a problem for me. What is your thought?
Well, I think we'd have to go back to the manufacturer, contractor, installer on the turf itself and see what it's rated for. Right now, we use a Gator vehicle to sweep, which is kind of like a golf cart.
But that's just one of our, I think that's all of our concerns, is the weight, and that's what you're looking for, is information from us.
Yeah, and as far as that goes, we can circle back with the engineer from the city who was on the project, the turf installation project. They probably have some soil reports that may be able to help us determine that. And the manufacturer of the turf, they may actually have experience with using some sort of a turf cover that we can, have that discussion there too.
And my opinion is, as all of ours, is as long as we're not impacting too much the user group and the field itself, I like it.
Right. Well, thank you guys for bringing up some of the important pieces that we've got to fit together, and I think it's just opened the opportunity up, especially with schedule and the engineering, for us to now expedite those conversations.
Sure.
But we appreciate you guys for giving us your time and chiming in. We'd like for you all to come if we pull this off.
Or maybe somewhere else in El Segundo, too.
We are being courted by Redondo Beach right now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And in the meantime, we're going to go to reports of subcommittees. Aquatic Subcommittee, was there anything?
We have not met. There is some success criteria that we'll be going over in the future weeks, and look forward to meeting next week.
Okay. Gateway Committee.
We have met, since we do that like every 2 weeks. However, I was not able to make the last meeting due to a work conflict, but we did go ahead and select 5 artists to move forward with. We did go through all of our finalists, and we selected the 5, and now we are putting the package out to them and awaiting a design presentation slated right now for January 8th, where those 5 artists will come to us with their presentation for the Gateway, and then we will move on that. So we're looking forward to January 8th to see those presentations.
Okay, thank you. Golf Course Subcommittee. I attended that meeting, and basically, I'm going to pass it off to Meredith, but it was the Lane Donovan just giving the financial reports, basically, and there was one person spoke at the meeting, and everybody's waiting to see what happens with Top Golf, but that'll probably be later in Meredith's report. So I don't want to, we'll leave it right there, and we'll let Meredith do her report later. So next we have the Transportation Subcommittee.
Yes, so we have met twice. In the first meeting, we discussed ideas for the vision of the committee and what we would like to see in general. So sort of put all the basic criteria on the table for what we would see as success, and what the scope of transportation would include. And we talked about a lot of interesting ideas, but really overall came up with kind of a user community description, understood some of the constraints around funding, some of the constraints around the existing delivery of service. We discussed environmental impact, city assets. There was a lot of different components of it, and we have drafted sort of a straw man for an overall objective or role of the committee. In the second meeting, we met to share some research findings that we had all done on what's happening in the current state. And we also talked about how we're going to complete our understanding of the current state. And one of the things that was proposed was that, and this is something that I think has been kicked around already, is the idea of hiring a consultant, not unlike the one we hired for the golf course committee. Was it the golf course? Yes? Or was it aquatics?
Well, aquatics as well had a coordinator, but it's more in lines with the task force.
The task force, right. So the idea would be to hire someone who has recently maybe helped a city transition from kind of where we feel we're a little bit behind in terms of transportation, and sort of helping us move to the future and really scope out an assessment of our existing services and what kinds of opportunities there are for the future. So we kind of came up with the criteria for that, which we're sort of kicking over to Meredith now. Meredith couldn't attend the second meeting, so we have to update her on that piece of it. But the idea is that we're going to kind of scope out what we see the consultant's role to be, and we hope to be able to bring that to the commission for a recommendation at the next meeting. Correct? Yes. That's our goal.
Okay, thank you. Youth Sports Council did not meet. We'll move to department staff reports. Recreation Superintendent Aricia.
I just want to remind everyone that we do open Twisted Tales tomorrow. It opens at 7. The staff and I and many others, all hands on deck, have been working very hard on this project. It's taken a lot of community volunteers, a lot of staff volunteers to make this happen. So please, you will have VIP armbands if you come down, and you can walk through and see what we've created down there. We have a special artist down there. His name is Ryan Jari. Am I saying that right? And he's spent a lot of hours putting this set together. So we're really excited. This is the first large one we've attempted in the department, so we're hoping that it's very positive. Other than that, you have my report. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions?
Yes, I did have one question, and
Yes, sir.
oddly enough, it's aquatics. Acacia, I realized we had an abbreviated September. I'll call it an anomaly, and I'm not sure if you've had a chance to talk to staff about it, but at Acacia, there were 60 non-residents in that short period and only 4 residents in the swim. Is that an anomaly, a misprint, or is that a special group that came in?
I wanted to, actually, I have this number circled because I hadn't had a chance to circle back with Janine. I do know that the plunge went down for a little bit of time in September, so maybe that was from
Okay.
that. I'm not quite sure, but I do need to speak with her about that number.
I'd just be curious why that, it doesn't match the previous
The
months.
other ones,
and
the 30.
Even on abbreviated, it seems, I'd be curious to know what happened.
Okay.
Thank you.
Aricia, on the Twisted Tales, it has been a lot of work down there. I've been down there a couple of weekends working, and
Yes.
I hope it's going to be successful. And it has taken a lot of volunteer hours and a lot of manpower to create that.
Yes.
And so do we have it all staffed now as far as the characters and working the event also?
We're pretty much staffed. The night we're having a challenge with is Halloween night, so I actually will be in character that night. I'm donating my time, and so is my husband. So that's the last night we're pretty much working on, but pretty much everyone was in place. We had an orientation last night, and it was very well attended. We had 40 plus come to hear the orientation, so they knew how to dress, what to do with the costumes, how to act during the whole time of the haunted house, be in character, don't get out of character at any time. So everyone's pretty excited.
I know I have had a couple of people ask me about how tame is it going to be on those, I think it's 2 nights for the children,
Yes.
because they have kids that are kind of flipped out about Halloween anyway. And
Yes.
so they were wanting to know really how tame it is going to be.
You will not have a lot of the characters on children days. The lights will be up, and we will not have the dragon breathing out at you. So it will be very tamed.
Okay.
I know, I did. I just realized I'm on camera, and I told you one of the parts of it. I'm one of those in my family, too.
Okay.
Tell the story.
It should be fairly tame for the younger kids on those days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Parks Maintenance Superintendent, Christopher.
Yes, a couple updates to the report. Last Sunday, Library Park had Make a Difference Day. We planted almost 500 shrubs and 10 trees in a very short period of time. We had quite a few people there, and it was a good event. My staff painted the trellis structure, columns, and the wood trellis itself prior to that, and it came out very nice. If you haven't seen it yet, I suggest you see it. And at the shade structures at campus, we're making good progress there. We have at least 1.5 canopies completed at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So we should be having the full canopies here fairly shortly.
Great.
And I'll take any questions.
Anybody?
I had something, and I don't know if it falls under Parks and Rec. I think it does because of the area that it is, or if it falls under Public Works because of being the sump. But the fence at Imperial and California now has 2 advertising banners on it for businesses, and I don't think the city has given permission for that. One has been up there for quite a while, and now I see a second one is added, and I just hope that other businesses aren't going to say, hey, we can get some free advertising as well. And I know, we have banners that go up on fences for advertising events that go around the city, which is one thing, but this is businesses advertising their business for free on our city fences. So it's there at Imperial in California. I just thought that I would bring up. And I think that the beautification day at Library Park went really well. I mean, there were a lot of people, probably 60, 70 people, a lot of youth groups, a lot of adults came. I worked there myself, and there was one couple that was working near me, and they said to somebody, oh, we came and volunteered here because we saw it was going to happen, and we were married here several years ago. And so we wanted to come back and help beautify the park. And there was another woman there that was volunteering, and she was doing it because her daughter's being married there in the gazebo at the end of the month. And so she wanted it to be replanted. And so it was a great event, a lot of kids working, a lot of little kids there working, hauling around buckets of mulch. And I thought it was a great event, and I said to Meredith, I think we need to jump on this and keep the momentum going, and let's go to another park, or let's go to another area and get something done. But Library Park in that area has needed to be done for years, and so I'm so glad that it was finally done. So thank you for all the hard work.
That's great. So I have a question about probably a contentious topic in town, and that is dogs off leashes in the park. And I see it every Saturday morning when I'm setting up soccer, and we have a lot of excrement on the fields. We see a lot of people with dogs off leashes during soccer, which always makes me concerned around kids. And and I see it in the evenings as I'm walking along. It's, for whatever reason, I've seen some stuff on social media about the dog park and how people, a bunch of reasons why people don't want to use the dog park, including, I think, somebody's dog was recently attacked there and was killed. But it's kind of, I think, brought up somewhat of an issue. I don't know what your experience and your staff's experience has been with picking up the dog excrement, but I feel like the problem is that somebody sees one dog there and thinks that that's okay, and then it starts to escalate. So I don't necessarily have a solution, but I just wondered what your experience and what are, is this something you're noticing also, and is there anything we can do about it?
I haven't noticed it so much on the weekends because I haven't been around, but I do notice dogs off the leash during the week and so forth. Somebody's throwing a tennis ball and so forth. At Rec Park, it seems like that the people have been pretty good about picking up after their dogs. I know over at Acacia Park, they are not. Even though we have the doggy bags and a station right there. They get complaints from our contractor who's out there mowing the turf and so forth. Maybe putting up more signs would be one item we could do.
Does anyone, is there any enforcement in anyone's, or does it incumbent upon individuals to sort of phone?
It is one of those kind of items that we consider community policing is usually where the eyes are. But it always helps to have more signs, so then people feel more comfortable to say something when they do see something. And then we have our park rovers in the afternoons and the evenings that we can certainly make sure that they're well aware of the rules and comfortable and trained to approach somebody if they see somebody. I know that we've had, our lawn bowling area is sometimes a bit of a de facto dog park.
Yeah.
We've placed more signs there. We've also removed the gates, thinking that might deter some of the activity, and it does to some extent, but we can certainly step up our enforcement, especially during those off hours when we're not at the office. It seems to happen on the weekends or in the early mornings or, in the evenings. Definitely what we want to deter is off-leash activity when there are a lot of kids around or people in general in those crowded sections. And I know that if I see that, I'll say something. But yeah, I think we can definitely train our rovers to be a little bit more active about pursuing that.
That's cool. Great.
Along the lines of the dogs, because of, the issue that happened a few weeks ago with that person's dog that was attacked and ultimately died, I think, the following day. And it was somebody from out of town whose dogs attacked a resident's dog. What is our policy there at the dog park? I know years ago, my dog was attacked by a dog, and the man was just like, well, I bring my dog here because he doesn't get along with others, and I'm hoping that he'll learn to do better. And I'm like, well, great, my dog was attacked, So what is the policy there at the dog park for when something like that happens?
Typically, when there are issues or dog fights or aggression, we have posted the animal control phone number. So it's usually handled by law enforcement and the animal control division of the police department. We have park rules and municipal codes, but it's really the police who can enforce the municipal code. So we encourage people to call 911, honestly, when that happens, so that at least a police officer can come out and document that incident, because it's really important for dog owners to have that documentation should they want to make a claim towards somebody or, get witness information and things like that. It's really important so that we can deter problematic situations from keeping to happen. I find it interesting that we rarely get phone calls about dog park issues, but we know that they occur. And so I think most people call the police. They don't call us when something happens. And a lot of times we find out in roundabout ways like social media, or if I see a police report that comes through and has that, it's a lot of times the first time I actually find out about it. So it would be something that we should be more aware of when something happens so that we can monitor the problem animals that maybe are recurring visitors.
Yeah, you would think that if the police are taking a report, that they would then pass that on to you each time so that you could keep track of that, so that we know if there are, quite a few problems going on there.
Yeah, and like I said, it's really important that people do make those reports so that we have that documentation.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions for Christopher? Seeing none. Meredith, your turn.
Sure.
Department Director's Report.
Yes, so just wanted to update everybody. Usually we have this meeting the night after City Council meeting, so I'll give you some reports on last night's City Council meeting. Was the public hearing for the Top Golf project, and I'm sure many of you have heard that there was a 4-1 approval of the Top Golf project last night at City Council. Most of the action items are related to land use, zoning, and adopting a new specific plan for the development of that project. The project includes the reconfiguration of the 9-hole golf course, a new clubhouse building, a new practice area with putting greens and short game, sand trap and chipping practice area, and then the construction of a Top Golf project, which is the 3-story driving range structure and a parking lot. So 4-1, the City Council approved the project. Now, there are definitely a lot of moving parts still with the project. And basically one of the action items is the adoption of an ordinance, and that changes some of those land use conditions. There'll be a second reading of the ordinance on November 5th at the City Council meeting, and then it takes effect 30 days thereafter. We're looking at executing some ancillary agreements with West Basin for the official use and formal use of those 27 spaces that are currently there abutting the lake's property, and that will be part of the project area. And also there's some buttoning up of agreements with Chevron, between Chevron and Top Golf, and getting the building plans through the plan check process and issuing of building permits. So there's still quite a few steps between now and when we can expect there to be a closure and a turnover of the property. But it looks like it could potentially happen in February or March of 2020. And so we'll be working with Lane Donovan on that transition plan and the closure plan, and making sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to notifying our customers and making that transition. So that's what I know tonight. Can happily answer any questions if you have them on that topic.
Yeah, in your report, you mentioned that the city is going to provide an updated golf course manual.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been completed, or is it in the works?
It's been completed. It's actually a reference, an exhibit to both the ground lease agreement for the driving range, as well as the management agreement for the operation of the golf course. Within the manual, it has very detailed requirements and minimum stipulations for youth instruction, youth programming. It calls out summer camps, weekend clinics, junior tournaments. Everything that we currently have today is included in that manual as a requirement of the operator, as well as access between the golf course and the driving range for youth programming and school programming.
Perfect. Would it be possible to get a copy for the council, the committee?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Oh,
You have more?
yes.
Please, go ahead.
Just wanted to make mention that at the last meeting, we talked about Memory Row. We are planning to bring that back at November with some policy recommendations on Memory Row. And we did, Christopher spoke to the applicant that was on the agenda from the last period, and we asked them to be patient while we move through the process. And so once we come back to the commission, talk about the policies and the process, which we want to move forward with in the future, then we can address that application.
Great. Anything else? Thank you. All right. Commissioner comments. Commissioner Watson.
Yes, so to recognize that the new shade it should be well on its way to being completed by Saturday, we are going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony that everyone is welcome to attend. There will be cupcakes and photos of our new shade just to celebrate on behalf of the city that we've built this new shade. So I wanted to make sure everyone was invited to that. And then secondly, wanted to just point out a podcast that I listened to recently that I think is relevant to folks, and it talks about, it's a Hidden Brain podcast, if you're familiar with Hidden Brain. It's August 12th, 2019, and it talks about the positive effects of access to nature for communities. So there's been a lot of research done on the negative impact of urbanization on people's brains. And this is kind of some extra information about the positive impacts of nature on people's brains and the impact it has for curing or treating depression and expanding mind capacity. So I thought it was just something that as a commission we should read or listen to and understand and share with the public how important it is, and encourage members of our community to get out and use some of these beautiful parks that we have, even if it's just for a few moments a day, because of the positive impact it has on people's minds.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Smoldak.
I just wanted to bring up the Library Beautification Day again and thank Meredith and Christopher for listening. I know I've talked about that for a while, about doing something with that part of Library Park. And I think it was a great idea to make it a community effort instead of just the city going in and tearing everything out and doing the planting. I think it was a great idea to make it about the community and bring them out. And like I said, let's capture that momentum and go elsewhere. But thank you for listening, and I think it's going to be a great addition there.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chairperson Davis.
I want to thank Aricia for meeting with us on transportation. It's kind of opened my eyes a little bit to about what can be done, what should be done, and some of the ramifications that can happen if we do or don't do it right. And when we talk about a consultant, I think that's real important that, myself especially is not a professional in transportation at all. I'd hate to make mistakes that have ramifications that we can't change. So I think that's going to be important in the future. The others, I'm glad to hear that we're moving forward with the lakes. Having that go on, I hope that we have the ability to chime in as part of the committee and see to it that, programming to the community is just as important as the top golf aspect are for both youth and, the men's and women's golf clubs. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to thank Jake Lane, the Eagle Scout candidate, for coming in, and I think it's a good project, and anything we can do to help the Parks Department, I think it's a great thing. So with that, we'll go back to public communications, and seeing none, we'll close public communications, and we'll adjourn to the next regular meeting on Wednesday, November 20th, 2019 at 6 p.m.